Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people have society? Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Will not take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, 'cause I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome to another edition of Political Unmuted. This is number 59. Can you believe how wonderful? I don't want to alarm anybody out there, but I went to get a glass of water. And Paul is, of course, our boss, and he's our expert, our political expert. He's our inspiration and our muse, but he is also the tech expert when it comes to doing it. And the last words I heard him saying as I left the room to get my glass of water was, "It's all broken." So if anything goes wrong today, it's all his fault, not mine. Let's say hello to everybody. We have 2 new people today. It's so very exciting. Jane, you've been on before, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Thank you for having me back again.
Oh, it's our honour. Tell us a little about yourself for people who might not know you or remember.
So I'm Socialist Think Tank member from the South East, and Paul and Laura and the team have really nicely been helping me to set up Socialist Think Tank Southeast, which is brilliant. So very excited about that. I'm not very interesting really, but I'm very happy to be here.
You sound very interesting to me. Have you got an area, a thing which is sort of your thing? Like, I mean, you know, I'm generally interested in politics, but my thing is climate change. Have you got a thing, Jane?
So, I care about so many things, like all of us here, but I really, really care about the housing crisis hugely. So I think when I was growing up, our home was repossessed when I was a child, and then we were, moving each year. We'd move to a different town in rented accommodation, then we'd have to move again to another town at the end of the year because the landlord had put the rent up and we couldn't afford it anymore. And yeah, I've just saw my mum work so many hours, working. She worked a day job and then she went out at night and worked a night job in a warehouse as well, and got about 3 hours sleep a night for about 10 years. I don't know how the hell she did it to, manage to pay the rent. And I've seen some shoddy things in the world of landlords and private rentals, and I've heard some bad things about social housing too, standards. I think ITV did a report recently. So I really, really care about that because, like so many things, it destroys people's lives.
A home for life is so important where you and the family grow up, and it's your home right through. It's vital. Thank you, Jane, for those words. And we got somebody else new as well. It's wonderful to put a face to the name on the chat, sort of Neil. And of course, you come from the greatest town in the world, don't you?
I do. I'm from Hull. I'm originally
not the greatest. You may be born in Hull, but you live in Bradford.
Yeah, I'm originally from Hull, but I live in Bradford. Yeah.
Tell us about yourself, Neil.
Yeah, I'm a photojournalist. Many people see me at demonstrations, protests, strikes, you name it. Normally photographing them for various publications, including the Morning Star, as one of the main outlets that take my work. But yeah, I live in Bradford. Until November last year, I was working in children's social care in Bradford, where I was a senior union rep for Unite the Union as well, and still a member of Unite the Community, and also a member of the NUJ as well. So trade unionism is at my heart.
Well, the sort of your view of things, that the angle you take will be just so interesting to us today. Thank you very much for joining us. And you have to warn you got huge shoes to fill. Stuart has this kind of personal following. They sort of love him, sort of. You can expect the hate mail coming through. Why are you not Stuart? But there we go. Sort of just
John, stop it.
Well, ride it.
I can try a Geordie accent if that helps.
Samantha's telling me.
We're not Geordies. I don't think there's any of us who are Geordies.
Hello, Samantha. And Paul, hello.
Hello.
Hi, boss. Okay, let's start. Now, the other thing I heard Paul saying as I was departing was, I don't have a moment of the week this week. So as I choose my first victim for moment of the week, I choose, of course, Paul. Paul, what was your moment of the week this week?
It's probably the whole Len McCluskey revelations that Keir Starmer has apparently reneged on all sorts of deals and things like that, and he says he doesn't trust him. And the story in was it the Independent or the Guardian? So there was a deal to allow Jeremy Corbyn to have the whip be readmitted into the Labour Party. It was sort of Len McCluskey's impression was that Keir Starmer had just jumped the gun and really lost his temper and expelled Jeremy Corbyn in a fit of rage, which he admitted to expelling himself and then or suspending himself anyway, and then and now it appears that Keir Starmer's saying he actually had nothing to do with it, because if he had something to do with it, then it would have meant that they'd broken the Equality and Human Rights Commission recommendations on day one had he been involved. And it's just It's just a big old mess, and in many ways I'm bored of it. In many ways I'm not surprised by it, and yeah, I guess that's mine.
It was an absolutely devastating article, I thought, and sort of blowing the whistle. Very interesting. Let's go to Jane. Jane, what was your moment of the week?
Sorry, it's not a very cheerful moment of the week, I'm afraid. I found that the Joseph Rowntree Foundation have done some analysis on the universal credit cut that's about to happen, and I was looking into it, and it said that 23% of the families in my constituency are going to be affected, and it's 10,000 families who are going to lose over £1,000 a year each. So that's horrendous. But if you add that up, that's also going to take about £10 million out of my local economy, which is lovely for all the small businesses here trying to recover from the last 2 years. And then they've hit us with the national insurance increase too, just to top that off. And I don't know how we're ever going to recover from this disastrous economic policy from this government that so many economists have been shouting for many, many years is ridiculous and doesn't work, and it just seems to get worse and worse. So that's not a very nice moment of the week.
And no, it's not very nice, but it's very important that you raise it. And it's particularly powerful, isn't it, when you actually talk about it at that very local level. Sort of millions of pounds taken out of the local economy, thousands of families suffering. Thank you very much. Neil, what's your moment of the week?
Yeah, I wish I thought the same one as Jane, because that was a great one.
It's not a competition.
No, but Teresa Coffey saying that just work 2 hours extra a week and you make it back. It's like, well, does she not realise that Universal Credit takes 63% off you for every pound you earn? It's stupid, but so she's either incompetent or a liar or both. But anyway, my moment of the week was on Saturday. I photographed the Liverpool against the Electronic Arms Fair in Liverpool, and it was very well organised. Actually, it was I'd say about between 3,000 and 5,000 people there. It was a huge turnout. Great speeches from John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn, Charlotte Lunt, who you had on Saturday, and various other people, and some councillors as well. Not many, but a few of them were prepared to break the whip and turn to. It was a very, very good, powerful demo, and turned all the attention in terms of the arms trade fairs in London at the moment for Dicey, for the world's largest arms fair. It was good that Liverpool got a bit of attention, but of course it wasn't in the mainstream media. It wasn't covered really at all in mainstream media. Of course, you know, they're happy to say about all these migrant boats coming here across the channel, but they're not prepared to talk about, well, hold on a minute, we fund the flipping problem for which they're trying to avoid in the first place. So that'd be my moment of the week.
And a spot-on moment of the week, Neil. Thank you very much indeed. What was it? What was the title of the demo again? What was it called? The what demo?
Liverpool against Electronic Arms Fair.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for photographing it.
Yeah, it's because the argument is that the council should stop it because it's in a building that's owned by the council, but not quite. It's kind of an arm's length organisation, but that organisation is owned by the council. But they're saying, well, we've got nothing to do with it, even though it's complete rubbish from all that I've read. But the big thing that happened this week as well, in terms of that's really helped the cause, is Massive Attack. We're going to hold a gig there in Liverpool, in that same arena, and it was going to be the first ever green gig where there was going to be zero carbon footprint, which would have been an absolute fantastic coup for Liverpool to pull off. And they said, no, we're going to go elsewhere now because we don't want to be in that room. So it's having an impact already, which is good to see. Yes,
I'm standing up for principles. Finally, thank you, Neil. Finally, Sam, moment of the week.
Yes, well, with all of those things, with the impending war that kills us all, and the fact that the Tories are going to take all our money off us, the last last bit of consolation we've got is that we've got good communities around us who will support us, and we've got another great bunch of people landed in our community in Shildon. One of the pubs, which has been a pretty problematic pub in the past, has been taken over by a folk music enthusiast. So I'm really glad about that, because it's really hard to cause aggro when you're just all about the brown beer and acoustic guitars. So I've been down there a couple of times last week. I've made friends with the guy. I sat through his Ceilidh band playing all the way through Saturday, and I'm really excited about that and helping them create this lovely, wholesome environment in the middle of Shildon Town Street, Church Street.
Fantastic, and I hope that works. So I love folk music. I'll come along and say I'm just down the road from Sam. I'll check it out. Thank you everybody for your moments of the week, and maybe time to move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
Hi, and by the way, I noticed that Graham Marsh is back with us this week. Lovely to see you again, Graham. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely, thank you. This is a question which, of course, as a historian, I'm particularly interested in, but it was raised on the comments last week, and I said we were going to do something about it. I don't know whether I'm going to take it as a very big story, but nevertheless, I've taken it first because it's a hangover from last week, and it's something which is continually actually used as a thing of accusation against the left. So let's just see what the answer is. Paul, the question is, ought English people to be ashamed of their country's history?
As I think, firstly, it's very important to be aware of the history. Very important to be aware of the history objectively. We are taught a very subjective history. We're taught that through the media. We're taught that through schools. And a lot of very important things can be missed out of history. So we get this really big idea. And I suppose if you look back through history that we're taught, it's like, oh, well, Great Britain did this amazing thing during World War II, and therefore every time Great Britain are involved in a war, then they are the good guys, basically. I think we historically see ourselves as the good guys in Great Britain. But, like, you know, before, if it had been up to some people in the country, we would have probably joined the fascists. We'd have certainly condoned them. And at a time, like, say, during the time of Franco, they much preferred supporting Franco than they did support the anarchists in Spain, for example. You know, they've often had this very, very strange history and a very dark history, very much like we have now, actually. So we've been led by very similar people for a very, very, very long time. And it's really strange. So I know people who absolutely detest privileged people, who absolutely think they run the show, like Boris Johnson's of this world. There's lots of people who are extremely proud of Britain, who absolutely detest what Britain is now. But historically, that's kind of where a lot of politicians have come from and a lot of the powers come from. So, you know, we've got this rose-tinted view of the past, and if you look at empire as well, like the British Empire, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, that was necessarily a good thing. We went there and we helped people. And, you know, like there's things like India, for example. Look at that. We gave them the railroad. Yeah, but it also made them go from 22% of the world's economy down to 4%. And things like that. You know, this is, and also like concentration camps and genocides. These are all part of Britain's history. And if we're not going to accept those things, then we're living in a fantasy land. I'm going to finish off, like, one of my favourite books I've read over the past couple of years has been Natives by Akala. And that's very interesting from the point of view of someone whose grandfather came over from Jamaica. And when he came over they had this glorified view of Britain because this is what they thought. They thought in Great Britain everything was brilliant and everyone was really rich and the streets were paved with gold. And when his granddad came over, he couldn't believe that there was a white person sweeping the streets. He just couldn't believe it. He thought in Britain that wouldn't happen. This was such an amazing place, and that's what we told everyone. But throughout every single story, there have been poor people. There have been poor people in this country and overseas and around the empire that have been oppressed in all this. So if people want to be proud of the good things that Great Britain have done, or the good things that people who are like them have done, we did a St. George's Day special where we talked about England specifically, about all the things to be proud of, like, the Chartists and like all sorts of different amazing things that people from this country have produced. But whether or not we should be so fiercely jingoistically proud of some of the terrible things that we've done and just say, actually, that doesn't matter, the bad parts of that, we'll just ignore that and say that it was all absolutely brilliant. That is an absolutely, it's a head in the sand point of view, and people don't like to see it. And it's the reason people go to defend statues of slave traders rather than speaking to people who are really alive about their lived experiences of how terrible things have been, or or trying to understand other people's points of view. So yeah, be proud of the good bits, but be aware of the bad bits if you want. Personally, I'm more like, I don't really think lines drawn on a map mean anything. I think what people do, I think people have more in common. I actually believe in classes. I think the working class have more in common throughout the world than the upper classes have with the people in their own country. And I think that goes for every country. They're always like this, either elected aristocracies or, people who are there anyway. And working class people have less in common with them than they do with the people who are around the world.
Thank you. Neil, are you proud or not proud?
In all honesty, neither. I'm like Keir Starmer. I'm on the fence on this one. But what I am ashamed of is the fact that we do, as Paul was saying, we do whitewash our history and only tell the good bits, and we only really focus on the good bits. Like whenever we talk about war, in wartime, war was referred to Second World War. And we don't acknowledge the fact that actually the UK has been involved in wars almost every year since. But yet we seem to think we're in peacetime now because the bombs aren't dropping here. But yet we are dropping bombs on other countries such as Yemen at the moment. So, there's a lot of collective amnesia. As Paul was saying about India, I was lucky when I was 16 that I went to India, spent a month in Kerala. And I saw that the first thing that I saw when I came out of the airport was people begging, people with leprosy, begging for any coins they could get of whichever currency. That's one of the legacies that we've left. We, as Paul indicated, that we did actually leave it in a worse state than it was when we first went there. So I don't think it. Pride cometh before a fall, isn't it? You know what I mean? And I think that we have too much pride. I think, I think we kind of need a bit. I think we need a bit less pride and a bit more understanding and a bit more. Paul's more or less covered all that I was saying because we need to hear it from other points of view. We were a colonial enforcer of other countries. We made slaves out of we did so much bad things in the world so that we could get rich. I mean, the landmass of Britain is 1% of the world's landmass, and we ruled half of the world. And and still you got people going, "Oh, Great Britain" and all that. I thought, well, who is it great for, and who thinks of it as being great? So I think we need less whitewashing. Is my view of it, and a bit more honest kind of reflection, and then we can learn from it. We're a global economy, we're a global world now, So, we kind of need to understand that if we're ever going to move forward as a country. It's it's almost a therapy session. So, yeah.
I think, Jane, that, what Neil says is, he says there's too much whitewashing. I think if you were to talk to people on the Tory benches in Parliament, they would say that there's too much trashing of British history, and that these pinko liberal teachers, the sort of teaching about all the bad things like slavery, and they forget the good things like Nelson and things like that. Do you agree with Neil that sort of we focus too much on the good aspects of the past, or would you say there's an argument that in fact children are taught a very balanced view of what history is, and teachers don't shy away from the bad things?
I don't know what they're teaching in school now, but certainly I was taught a very positive view of what we'd done in the world, and in World War II, the good things we did, and we were on the good side. And I wasn't taught about the people in this country that had wanted to support the fascists, and I wasn't taught about the fact the British government stopped the film being made showing what had happened to the people in the concentration camps, because they didn't want us feeling too sorry for the refugees here, so that the people were happy to have them come to this country. So I don't feel I was taught a balanced view of history in school, and I suspect it's not changed under this particular government.
Do you think, therefore, which side do you stand on? Which side of the fence are you on, or are you a fence sitter like Neil?
I think we should be very ashamed of a lot of things, but I think we should be very proud and celebrate the people who've done amazing things, and the NHS and people like Ken Loach who've stood up and created films like Kathy Come Home, and the good that the charity shelter's done. There's some things we need to be proud of, and we need to think about those things, because that's what we need to carry on doing.
Perhaps the thing to be proud of is the times when we've called out the things that we shouldn't be proud of. Sam, does any of this matter? Is history all in? Should we put it behind us and move on, or is there a value in discussing our history?
That's a really good question, and I think if it spurs you into action, if you are a teacher, if you are a history teacher, for example, and it encourages you to critically evaluate what the curriculum is teaching, and you're helping to decolonize the curriculum, fantastic. If you use that to inform how you talk to people around you and your children so that they are better informed going forward, that's fantastic. But I think we do have to safeguard against wasting our time talking to people who will never agree with us. It's a waste of our energy, and we need to focus on changing minds that are winnable, but also supporting our friends who are fighting all of their own battles in their own communities along their own lines. So yes and no. Again, terrible fence sitting here. I'm going to get splinters, but I think that's the thing. We've got to what's it called? Choose your battles, I think.
Thanks, Sam. I've got some really... If
anyone asked if I was sitting on the fence, I'm not really sitting on the fence on this one. I think people just need to know the truth, make their own minds up. I don't think, personally, I am hugely proud of a certain section of what we've done, but I'm hugely ashamed of the behaviour of a lot of others, and I'm not going to shy away from the fact that Britain has done some horribly shameful things, like they starved millions of Indians, and I think it's debatable, but invented concentration camps and did some terrible things to their own people, like the enemy within. It isn't in with the police were occupied, and it wasn't actually the police, according to people who lived there. They think it was actually the army that was sent in by Margaret Thatcher. So, Britain has done some terribly shameful things, including invading Afghanistan for no reason, including invading Iraq for no good reason. And there are some real things to be ashamed of here. So if people want to take that pride in their nation, which I think is quite it's a basking and reflected glory thing, isn't it? You haven't actually done anything in that thing. Then you're going to have to take the rough with the smooth, aren't you? You're going to have to go, right, okay, I'm really, really proud of what we've done and accept all the things you've done. You just, otherwise you say, well, you don't do the pride thing. It's quite a funny thing to be proud of a country, I would say.
I think that if I can bring this to an end, I think it's a tremendously important issue. My country, right or wrong, is basically a kind of a view which is coming in more and more into politics. And we have this xenophobia, this nationalism, this right-wing extremism. And so I think it's tremendously important that we develop the kind of balanced, even nuanced view of history that you've been talking about. I think you've been fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. 3 important modern political issues to talk about. Let's move on. Main one. We're going to take quarter of an hour over this and rush through the next 2, everybody. But quarter of an hour is still not very long. Neil, just talk to us about this. This is the question of the social care tax plan that Boris has brought forward. Talk us through what's going on and some of your thoughts about it.
Yeah. Well, Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze for a while, Neil. Sorry, yes.
Right. Sorry. The Tory government have decided they need to fix their own mess that they've created over the past 10 years by fixing social care, which was already broken in 2010, but's been broken even more since as a result of cuts. The way I've looked at it is that there's one element that when people tend to think of social care, in particular for adult social care, they think of old people in care homes, and that's a fraction of it. I mean, it's a big fraction, but it's a fraction. What people don't see is that actually, first of all, it's local authorities that are responsible for providing adult social care. And they've been cut to the absolute bone in this country. Well, certainly Labour-run councils have, more so than Tory-run ones. And it's just important to note that in 2019, 2020, the amount of money that was spent on social care by local authorities was £23.3 billion. That were it, £23.3 billion, which is only £99 million more than it was 10 years ago, despite an ageing population. And of course, that figure excludes the amount of people who pay privately for their healthcare as well. But there's a couple of statistics that do jump out at me, and it's this: in 2019, 2020, there were 1.9 million new requests for social care in England alone, and of that, 560,000 were working age people. But nearly 99% received none whatsoever. Nearly a third received nothing. And of those that got some level of care, that's only 43%. And the bit in the middle received signposting or advice or something like that. So actually so that sets where we're at in 2019, 2020. Then we have the pandemic, which no one could have predicted apart from the modelling that predicted it, and the numerous warnings that came from World Health Organization. But of course, no one could have predicted it. And that's made social care far worse than what it was when you combine it with the underfunding and everything else. And now, so Boris Johnson, who came in Downing Street saying, I've got a plan to fix it. And then I think it was a week after the general election, then said, no, I haven't got a plan. And, it's like, well, who could have seen that one coming? So his plan now is to raise national insurance by, I think it's 2%. I could be wrong about that.
1.25.
And it's, because that's going to pay for social care. It was what, sorry? It was how much, sorry?
It's 1.25, but that's extra.
Sorry,
so
1.25.
yeah.
It is, yeah. But yet there's no plan. There's no plan to go alongside this, so how's the money going to be spent? Who's it going to be spent on? Is it going to go to local authorities, or is it going to go to private healthcare providers? I mean, let's not forget track and trace is a really good example here of where money can be just thrown away. And of course, there's other big questions as well as part of this, which is, there's an army of unpaid carers in this country that, look after relatives, friends, etc., who get no recognition whatsoever from this government. Absolutely none. Is some of that money going to go to them? Is it going to go so that they can have respite care so they can have a bit of a life? Probably not, because local authorities are actually starting to cut back on respite care now because they haven't got the money to afford that. How will the money be spent? Nobody knows. There isn't a plan. So they're putting up the tax now, and then later on they're going to come back with a plan. It's like, well, and it seems to me it's the wrong way around. But today there's a glimmer of hope that came today, and that was Richard Bergen who put a motion forward saying, well, actually, we should create a wealth tax, and that's where we should raise the money from. And it was less than 10% of the PLP supported that. Now, that was only for the proposal. I don't know what the vote has been yet. So I don't know how many actually supported it in terms of the vote and how many voted against the tax rise. But this is something that Labour should have been romping ahead of. We have the idea. It was in the 2019 general election manifesto for the National Care Service, where a lot of what the Tories are talking about solving with this tax hike, which will affect the poor. I'm not interested in the old versus young argument. That's irrelevant. It's yet another example of rich versus poor, and that's the argument we need to focus on. And in the 2019 general election, there was the plan laid out there as to how to solve this crisis. So Keir Starmer shouldn't be needing to come up with another couple of weeks and a 14,000-page essay of what to do. He should be flipping out there at the front saying, this is our idea, here it is, we're going to sort it. You should have voted for us and we'd have it sorted. But no, instead he runs around with his arse on the floor and he thinks that people are going to find that attractive. And it's like, there's no opposition from him. He's had a year and a half during a pandemic where you would have thought he'd be thinking about, well, what's the future of the health service going forward? And of course, it's part of the I can't help but think there's something more sinister going on, which is about selling off the NHS, saying it's unaffordable. We have to put it up. We have to put up these the national insurance, and of course, the people are going to be paying for it are the people already working in healthcare. So that it's just. I'm not going to call it a plan because there isn't a plan. I'm not going to call it a policy because it isn't a policy. They've got no mandate for doing this. It wasn't in the general election. There's been no vote on it whatsoever, apart from in the Tories. And of course, are there enough backbenchers in the Tories to stop this tax hike going ahead? I don't think there is.
Thank you very much indeed. I mean, Sam, the mention of the Tory backbenchers by Neil leads me seamlessly through to Dehenna Davison. First of all, do you acknowledge that she has actually done quite well in this thing? She's one of those who's opposing it, or is she opposing it for all the wrong reasons? And secondly, do you think, all the sort of, because we're so left oriented, our focus is always on the damage it's done to the Labour Party and how useless the Labour Party is about it. But in fact, the newspapers are full about the damage it's done to the Tory Party and the trouble it's causing for Boris Johnson. Do you think that there's any kind of suffering on the Tory side of things? Do you think that this has knocked them back at all? What do you think of Dehenna?
I was surprised to hear that she abstained on the vote. She did. So for those of you who don't know, my MP, Dehenna Davison, has a Sunday morning spot on GB News where she sits alongside Nigel Farage and does a bit of it's a second job. She's like a TV presenter. So on that Sunday's show, she had held up the page from the manifesto, and she said, no, we were elected that we weren't going to put taxes up, and I'm not going to put taxes up, and that, and she did specifically mention that raising national insurance hits the poorest the hardest, and that it is unfair. And then she went ahead and abstained. Now, abstaining is not opposing. Abstaining is not showing up for work. And it just goes to show, people are saying, hasn't she done well for a Tory? Hasn't she done well for a Tory? She chose not to vote against her best wishes of her constituents. She didn't vote for the best wishes of her constituents, but she wouldn't do that anyway because she's a Tory. Didn't she do well for a Tory? Well, I'll tell you what would be better next time is if we didn't have a Tory MP and we had a Labour MP who voted in support of the best in support of their constituents. That would have been a great clip. Never mind.
Jane, do you think that, I mean, it's clearly not enough at all, but do you see any benefits on what's being proposed at all?
No, nothing at all. It's going to be so harmful for the economy. Working people are suffering so much already. Not just working people, the 99% are suffering generally, and taking more money out of their pockets at this time is one of the least helpful things they could do. It's going to hit businesses as well as individuals, and I don't think it's going to fix the social care problems because it doesn't address any of the real issues in that system. It's just it's a headline grab for them again, isn't it? Or we've done something and then it's gone and people think they've done something, but it wasn't a very useful thing they actually did.
I'll come to you in a moment, Neil. I was reading an article where there's a woman who's paid £400,000 for her mother's care. She's 6 years in a care home, £400,000. She has long-term dementia. I mean, do you not think that the cap is a step towards trying to do something about that?
I mean, if you've got a completely different politics to me, then you might see it that way, but it's just going down a path I wouldn't have even gone down. It seems like there's a really obvious answer to this. It was in our manifesto at the last election, like Neil says. This has got nothing to do with it. It's a sticking plaster over a wound. It's not even that.
Neil, very briefly, because we need to be moving on.
Yeah, the cap was the cap was proposed in the Labour manifesto as well of £100,000. So that's where that's come from, in my opinion. But the main people who are going to suffer from this are the people who are going to pay the most, which is disabled people, who receive care and stuff like that. And we talked about Ken Loach earlier on. Jane mentioned about him. Have you seen Sorry We Missed You? The B story in that is about a care worker who's running herself into the ground trying to do a job because she cares, and it's kind of like, and it's people like that who are really going to suffer, and disabled people in particular are really going to be hit hard because a lot of disabled people, as it is, pay premium on top of the paltry benefits that they get. Well, I'll say benefits. I don't think it is a benefit. I think it's an amount to help you. I don't agree with the word benefit, but anyway, so it's going to be them as well. It'd be good to hear from some disabled people about how, what their thoughts are on this. Because of course, let's not forget they were also left out of the uplift in benefits for the for legacy benefits. Again, I'm saying that word and don't like it, but they were left out of that as well. So it'd be interesting to see what their perspective would be now.
Yeah, thank you, Neil, for your expertise on all this. It's been really helpful. Paul, a lost opportunity for Labour?
Always, but I think the worrying thing about me is the economic illiteracy of all the politicians. It's just like, it's a complete nonsense the way they go on. They talk about, I don't understand, even if the economy worked the way they think it works, which it clearly doesn't, it's not tax and spend, it's spend and tax, and the tax is a redistributive thing. And if you think, actually, right, so look at what's happened in the pandemic. There's been comments going in there. Lilith said about how about how 84% of it's going to private providers, and some of those will be ethical, some of them won't, some of them will be skimming from the top. But basically, what's happened during the pandemic as well is most of the money that has been pumped in by the government, which is pumped in by basically typing numbers into a screen and saying, right, that money's now available. That's how easy the government and the Bank of England create money. So they create money in that way. The problem we've got is most of that money, because of our absolutely broken capitalist system, is going towards the richest people in the world. The billionaires are getting richer, and none of the money is staying in the communities, and none of the money circulating. So if you were going to do a tax raid, really I think you need to completely change the system so this doesn't happen. The problem is the fact that the money's going straight up to those people. But if you can't do that, then you tax the wealth of the richest people. You don't take the money from people who don't have it. If you're going to raise tax, it needs to redistribute the wealth, and that is a last case scenario in a broken system. So I don't know, raising national insurance is going to mean that people in our communities are going to be poorer, which means less money will be spent in our communities, which means less money will be available in our community, and it will not affect landlords like Paul Howell, who voted for it. It will not affect him in the slightest. It will not affect people who are billionaires, because they barely pay national insurance anyway. They have ways and means of getting out of these things. So that is the situation we find ourselves in. Rich people getting richer, and the Tories pretending that it's tax and spend to try and keep us in our place by raising national insurance that they don't know what they're going to do anything with. This is all about keeping us in our place. It's a power trip. It's nothing else. It's not trying to be economically sound. They don't need to do this, because that is not the way our economy works.
Yep. Thank you very much, Paul. And a disastrous decision. The main thing for me is the utter failure to specify what's going to the NHS and what's going to the care system. We have an absolutely creaking at the seams care system, and the fear is that the NHS will just swallow up the sum total and more, and where for care is just the big issue.
Through private providers as well for the NHS.
That's just such a do, and I'm really sick about it. Righty-ho. Jane. So I was wondering whether I've messed up again, because I was wondering whether I should go that, but we've done the other questions, haven't we? Zarah Sultana. Now, this came in as a late bid and shot to the top of the poll. She was talking about Islamophobia and racism, and perhaps understandably became distressed about it. But is this a big story, Jane, that she got emotionally distressed? What do you reckon to this story?
It should be a big story, because this really matters. I think we've gone down a really bad path, or we're going down a really bad path in this country. I think she's right. It does come right from the top, with the offensive language used even by the Prime Minister, not just in private and reported, but in articles that he's published, standing up in public arenas and saying disgusting, offensive things that really hurt people. And then you hear that there's increases in attacks and violence against minorities after he said these things. And maybe that's not his intention, but we need people smart enough to know the consequences of what they're going to do when they've got that platform. And I think it's really important that we start to see what he's doing. People, it's not okay.
I'm sorry that we seem to be having a bit of a problem with the reception. What was that last sentence against, Jane? You just froze and we missed the whole of it.
Also, it was just, we need to start seeing what this is doing to people. It's not okay. We need to treat each other like human beings. We're not cash generating units, on a step of importance according to our ethnicity. We're all human beings. We're all equal.
I mean, that is unarguable. When we were talking earlier, I warned you that I'd be asking you this. I mean, every one of us on this panel she read out some of the things that people had said to her, and got distressed about those things. Sort of every one of us on this panel has had much worse said to us on social media. Do you not think that she was overwrought about this? Do you think a less emotional? What we're dealing here, I think, is one of the major problems facing our society, and it's sort of a key evil, and sort of by shifting the balance from the focus from the Islamophobia and racism onto her emotional state when she was giving the speech, do you not think that damaged the impact of what she was saying?
No, I did the opposite, because she clearly wasn't just talking about herself. There were children growing up in this country. There are other people living in this country dealing with these things every day. And we need to know this is what it's doing to them. It's damaging them, and it's damaging us and dividing our communities.
Thank you, Jane. God bless you. Sam, an idea?
I think it's I didn't actually watch the speech, so I'm not sure what the actual things that she read out were. But yeah, obviously I've never been a victim of
You're a terrorist,
Islamophobia.
you need to die, go back to where you came from, that kind of thing.
Okay, but saying that to a white person is very different to saying that to somebody who has an ethnicity which is always being discriminated against. So I think those things have a different weight, and so it's not directly comparable. I mean, yes, I particularly have had some horrendous things said to me on social media, and people need to bloody stop it and get over their own end and grow up. But I do think it's important for people to show emotion as and when it hits them. I think it's important for the public to see politicians as human beings who have feelings, because we don't do ourselves any favors by just constantly putting on a brave face and going, oh, it doesn't bother me, I'm big and strong, because we are humans and we do have feelings. Go on then, John.
Thank you so much. Neil, here's another idea. The problem is Islamophobia and racism. The language that people use is a symptom. Do you think that we're trying to tackle the symptom rather than trying to tackle the problem?
No, I don't think we're even trying to tackle the symptom or the cause. I think it's rampant in our society, and it's been pillared and it's been used as a weapon by a lot of the mainstream right-wing press, as well as being used by various high-profile politicians. So it doesn't surprise me. And the fact that this, what she said didn't actually make any headlines or anything like that really tells you how normal it is. And that's the bit that sickens me the most. When I was watching the clip of what she was saying, all that I could think of is Luciana Berger. And when she gave that speech in Parliament about anti-Semitism, and she broke down in tears saying she's had all this from Labour Party members, even though she could never prove it from Labour Party members. But still, I believe she received all that abuse. I do believe that. And yet that was in the headlines for days afterwards. So there seems to be, acceptable forms of racism and less acceptable forms of racism. Of course, there shouldn't be any acceptable forms. It's as simple as that. But I mean, I worked in children's social care where a lot of my colleagues had to do training for the Prevent agenda. And, I had to actually explain to them why it was racist, because it was essentially asking you to spy on Asian families in the aim that you might uncover some intelligence, even though it doesn't do that. It's ridiculous, that racism is rampant in our society, and we do need to find a solution to this where people can discuss things openly, and some of the things that were said were horrific. Being a terrorist and things like that because of the colour of her skin and because of religion, it's disgraceful. And yet we tell people we're a tolerant country. And if you want to see how tolerant we are, have a look at the front page of the Daily Mail on any particular day. Yesterday when Emma Raducanu won the US Championship thing, US Open. Alongside a large picture of her, it pretty much said that the headline was pretty much saying "Go back to where you come from," but it was about pushing migrant boats. I call them refugees, but but pushing them back to France. It's like you couldn't make it up. On one page, they had this the story of a woman of migrant family that has done Britain proud, and then at the same time, right next to it, so we're welcoming refugees that are pretty good with a racket now. Is that the level we've come to?
Thank you, Neil. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's sort of we're going to have to press on. God bless you for what you're saying. Agree, Paul. You just a quick summary, please, on this subject.
What I worry about is that she's brought this up and she said it's members on both sides of the house aren't taking this seriously. And I think what's happened over time is it's become a box to check to say as a politician, oh, yes, I'm anti-racist, but they don't intend to do anything at all about it. And actually, they don't even intend to understand it. And they are the only time they ever really care about it is when they can go at the opposition with it and say you're a racist for this or you're a racist for that. And we saw this over the past few years where people didn't really go for Boris Johnson for actually being racist, and people went for Jeremy Corbyn, having him personally not done anything racist. I don't think he's been accused of anything actually racist, and yet it is widely accepted that he is somehow a racist. You know what I mean? So that to me suggests that there's something else going on. There's an underlying thing there where even caring about racism has become something else. It's become something to be used against one another rather than actually caring about the racism that you want to stamp out.
Thank you, and we're going to stop there. That is just such a wise thing, Paul. Stuart, watch out. Paul's taking your mantle here of the killing last statement. Our last question is an article in the Northern Echo. Durham police charge dozens of beggars and rough sleepers. And I was really surprised by this because actually Durham County Council has a fantastic policy on rough sleepers. So I just asked Samantha to sort of talk about this. What's going on here? This is absolutely at odds with what the county council. This is the police arresting them, sort of under the Vagrancy Act, is it? And absolutely against the kind of thing that Changing Lives and Durham County Council are trying to achieve. We only have 5 minutes for this topic. Have a bit of a talk, and I'll take quick comments from the other three. Sam.
Great. Okay, so the news is that since 2015, and relatively recently, Durham police made 61 charges under the Vagrancy Act. So first of all, what I'm going to say is, I'm not excusing it, but if the police have something at their disposal to use, it's very difficult to then blame them for using it. I don't think the Vagrancy Act should exist. I think it's a regressive, it's a terrible law. But knowing what I know about the problems that we have in society, sometimes the police have to use tools which aren't supposed to be for a certain thing for another thing. So I know Durham County Council, and I know they I'm working hard at the moment to try and get help for somebody who's on the streets in Shildon who sadly does not want help. So there's not a lot you can do there. And I know our local police are very passionate and very caring and supportive. And I know that the police and the council work together to find houses. And I know there's plenty of houses for people. In County Durham, there are plenty of spare houses. There are places people can be housed. So I do think this is the Northern Echo trying to stir up a bit of a story. And I think if you looked at that number compared to other local authorities, you'd probably find it is extremely low. But I think it highlights the fact that this law should be abolished rather than, it should highlight the fact that the law should be abolished rather than being used as a stick to hit Durham police over the head with. Durham police, who are consistently ranked as outstanding in when they get inspected, they can't be doing that much wrong.
Thank you. Okay, 3 people. I'm going to ask you for your comments, but it's 1 minute each. And please forgive me that when the minute clicks, that's it. Okay, I'm going to just cut you off very rudely. Jane, first of all.
I don't know what to say about this, but I think we need a housing first policy in this country, and we need to deal with the complex needs of people on the streets, and this is just not helpful at all. But I don't know why the police have done what they've done. I don't know if people have made complaints and then they're in a situation where they feel they have to act on complaints even if they don't agree. Maybe that's not the case, though. I don't know.
I think very often, I've been involved in a situation, Jane, where as Samantha says, the person refused to accept any of the help. Clearly a mental health issue, needed help desperately. But the only way that anything could be done, he was camping on private land, and the only way was the police had to intervene in the end. Neil.
Yeah, I think is it not disgraceful that in 2021 we criminalise people for being poor, which is pretty much the point Sam made. But yeah, I don't know what else I can really add. I mean, I was just looking up as Sam was talking, and West Yorkshire Police in the past 6 years have charged 886 people and took them to court for begging, and it's like, would the money take them to court, convicting them and trying to chase the fines from them? Would it not be better spent in propping up social care systems such as mental health services, homeless services, etc. With the 5th richest economy in the world, why the hell have we got anybody in such abject poverty that they're actually criminalised for it? That's the real question we need to ask.
Thank you, Neil. What a brilliant point. Spot on. And the last word, Paul.
There's a couple of issues here. One's a logic point, like taking people to court who have no money to pay a fine because they have no money, because they have nowhere to live, is just utterly illogical. It's utterly stupid anyway, regardless of the cruelty of it all. I worry about what the police do sometimes. I worry about what the police how the police find time to do things like this, because I'm sure that there are other things that are very pressing for the police to do. I know that there's and why are they concentrating on this? But I'd just like to finish on a little comment on what Robert Jenrick said. He said, I think he said, finding people who already have next to nothing is pointless. This was someone else, but finding people who already have next to nothing is pointless and just drives people further away from support, often keeping them on the streets for longer. Housing Secretary Robert Jenrick told the House of Commons in February the Act should be consigned to history. If only they had the power to do something about this. These poor people, it should be. Why can't someone just get their heads together and get something done about this 1800s law? Because it's very silly. Dear me.
Thank you very much, Paul. And there we have it. Thank you for letting me bully you people. God bless you. Can I just say thank you to Jane and Neil. Your contribution to the show has been spectacular. Thank you. Really, some super ideas coming out. I hope people appreciate it on the comments. Thank you, Sam and Paul, as always, just stalwarts. And you know what happens now? We all go, I actually haven't had a drink of water, but we take a bit of a break. We listen to No Passaran, and we come back, and Sam looks at some of the fantastic things you've been saying for a short while. And so stick around if you can. If you've got to go, goodbye. Have I forgotten anything, Paul?
Nah, just if you've got to go as well, don't forget to do all the subscribing things and become a member of Socialist Think Tank and all that stuff. And also, what Neil said about what disabled people think about this, we've got DPAC coming on, Disabled People Against the Cuts, on Saturday. So we will find out exactly what they think about this. Some disabled people, they don't speak for everyone, but they are absolutely incredible, DPAC. So looking forward to that one.
Fantastic work that Socialist Think Tank is doing week in, week out. Unbelievably good. If you got to go, goodbye. Otherwise, see you in 5 minutes. Bye-bye.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say. And around here we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. And around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first. And around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. there'll be no place around here today. Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello, we're back. I've just been catching up. I've stopped and started this knitting project about 12 million times, so I'm getting pretty single-minded about it now, like every moment spare, because I've got a lot to catch up with. Thanks for sticking around and talking to us. Speaking of difficult, we were talking about whether we should be ashamed of being British and difficult conversations. This will tickle you, John. I have been mandated to attend equality and diversity training. I know I'm such a naughty girl. Well, not me specifically. The complaint wasn't about me at all, actually. But there was a complaint made about a member of the town council that I'm on. And in the response to a member of public, which the complaint was made about, our town council used the phrase "our community." And the Legal and Governance Department at Durham County Council have decided that that was exclusionary language, and that because nobody in the town council picked up on it and debated it and said we shouldn't use the phrase "our community," it should have been "the community." Apparently, we all have to attend equality and diversity training. So me, being the lefty snowflake that I am, I was like, that's great. I love training. I love learning new things. I'm really going to enjoy learning this. But that was not everybody's take on the situation. But as usual, it will be the people who don't need the training so much which will attend, and those who probably do need the training will not attend. And actually, there's no way of forcing anybody to attend. So that's great. Thanks, world.
How can they ask us to ask you to do that for something that appears to me to be just normal language? I've seen people talking about our community all the time, and yet some people are saying absolutely horrendous things on a regular basis and not being sent for training at all. I really don't understand.
It is interesting. I mean, to give you some context, Neil and Jane, a local councillor did actually compare people going for their COVID vaccinations to being sent into a gas chamber during the Holocaust. And I don't believe that she was asked to do any training or there was any case to be answered about that, because it was argued that she was acting in a personal capacity. So it does seem a bit strange, but there we go. I tell you what, the whole thing about the disciplinary processes in local government is a mess. I mean, unless you actually commit fraud, you can't be deposed as a councillor. I think the highest sort of punishment a council can give you is something called censure, where they basically just publish a statement saying that they disagree with what you did. So it's the very toothless sort of situation going on. And yes, our town clerk was told that we had to provide the training for the councillors, but she didn't have to record who attended, and there was no punishment for not attending. So that was just really useful use of printer ink, that, wasn't it? Oh gosh.
Well,
anyway,
just on the back of that, so.
Anyway,
on the back
so
of that, I worked in.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
go
I
for it.
worked in Bradford Council for 8 years, And I was never offered any quality and diversity training at all. There wasn't any provided at all. In one of the most diverse cities in the UK, none. And the councillors themselves did a report which revealed huge problems with racism within the council, which still hasn't been tackled. And the first thing you do is you need to educate people. So it's interesting to hear that other local authorities have the same problems as Bradford. It's not good enough. It's shocking.
Definitely. Absolutely. What tickled me in the comments was when we were having internet connectivity issues. Mark said, "Don't you just love this capitalist broadband?" Yeah, it's working really well.
Apparently, my confused faces class as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that your confusion is valid. On this one, I get really angry about the sort of what Paul was saying when they complained about people saying, I was taught you must never talk about my school because it's a very tyrannical thing. It doesn't belong to you. The school doesn't belong to you. I didn't call it my school because I thought it belonged to me. I called it my school because I thought I belonged to it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
say my family.
A stupid thing to say. And then
You're not
when
the
we talk
gaffer.
about our community, this is it's not exclusionary at all. It's just sort of, it's surely that's what you're supposed to do as a counsellor. Look after your community. So for God's sake, I'm cross with them about something where they disagreed with me. So that's coming out. And you're absolutely right about the fact that it's just completely bonkers is the disciplinary and things. People are getting away with things they shouldn't get away with, and then they come up with this nonsense. Anyway,
does this not refer back to like my point about this is almost like a box checking exercise, isn't it? It's like, oh yes, we very much care about equality and diversity, so therefore we shall send you on a course. And like, a lot of the time, the courses that I've been on, a lot of the time you think, well, this only exists so that you can get a certificate at the end of it. What does this course achieve? Well, you get a certificate at the end. What would have happened if you hadn't have made the course? You wouldn't have got a certificate. But did it do anything? Did it help anyone? No. There's no point in the training.
I went on an equality and diversity course at Durham County Council. And as you know, I'm autistic and I like my body space. And sort of they're very good to me at Durham County when I was a councillor. And what I would do is I would sit on the end of the row and I would remove the chair next to me and put it to one side. And it just created a bit of space between me and the next person and made me, and everybody was very happy with that, And the person actually would go and who sat next to me, they would often say, "Do you mind me sitting in this seat, John? Do you need more space?" They were just lovely. And I went and I got there early, moved the chair as I did. The course leader came over and put it back. And so I said, I waited till he'd gone and I picked it up and I moved it out. And he came and he put it back again and he says, "We're going to need all the chairs today." And sort of, I just thought, well, the only person who's not accounted for my autism in Durham County Council in the last year is the equality and diversity trainer who never thought to ask me why I was doing this. And anyway, I moved it again the third time and that was the end of that. But sort of so some of this is bonkers, isn't it? But that is not surely, Sam, to downgrade the importance of training in issues such.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, but like I said, I will go on the training and I will do my best to benefit as much from it as possible. And I will definitely scrutinize those kinds of replies a little bit harder in the future. So that's job done. Tim Dredge recommends the Citizens Advice Bureau equality and diversity training. I will forward that on to our town clerk, who I'm sure will be happy of any help she can get for this extra work she's been given. Oh, geez. Well, there we go. That's life. What else? Funny comments or interesting comments did we have? the thing about that Lilith said about 84% of the care being given by for-profit companies, like we all, I think me and John know a private care home manager. I think a lot of people probably know people who are in managerial or roles within care homes, and you know that they're good people and they are trying their best in the context that they are. But whenever you've got a for-profit company, you've got a whole lot of money that could be spent on the service rather than giving money to your shareholders, haven't you? So I think that really needs to be driven home, that as long as we've got the majority of care being delivered by for-profit companies, there is always going to be a bit of a care crisis, actually, because they're always going to drive the highest amount of money as possible out of the people who are paying, whether that person who is paying is the local authority, the government, or the end user. They're always going to try and maximize the profits because that's their legal obligation as a profit-making company. So I think that's a huge thing, and that's one of the reasons this tax hike is not going to change anything, isn't it? Because it hasn't done anything about that. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as private companies have the majority of the market, that's what's going to happen.
Well, that's what public money appears to be for now. It appears to be to fund the private sector. Like, this is happening more and more and more. And there's been analysis done on the City of London and stuff that suggests that actually the City of London, everyone's always like, oh, it generates so much money through the wealth laundering of all these different things. And there's some analysis that's gone on that suggests that it's actually taken money out of the country. It hasn't been at all a good thing, and it actually has taken more money than it's put back in, because all it ever does is take from the public sector and then hide it offshore. And I'm sure I mentioned to you that I was reading the Panama Papers, and that was just an absolutely sickening thing that we've gone. That nothing really happened about that, nothing really happened about the Panama Papers. And it's actually, there's quite a hopeful section in there where the authors of the Panama Papers, the people who'd done all the research, and it was such a meticulous thing and so well done. And they were like, and I think I can see the beginnings of a sign of change towards the end of the book. And it's like, nah, you didn't, nothing changed. In fact, it's probably getting worse. Now the difference is that people just accept that the money will be laundered and money will be taken offshore, and these people won't pay tax, and actually it's ordinary people who will pay tax and not everyone else.
Yeah. Seems to be a lot of feasibility studies being done as well. Like everybody I'm talking to is doing a feasibility study into something, and I'm just like, can you not just decide whether you think it might be a good idea and just do it? Because I feel like there's a lot of people being paid for doing feasibility studies, and it just seems like really basic things. Like one of them is a feasibility study into whether a building can be used for social care. Well, surely people who are providing the social care could go to the building and tell you if it's feasible. Anyway, it's making money for someone. That's the thing, isn't it? Well, it's making money for someone. I wasn't a huge fan of Bullshit Jobs, the book, but I did appreciate
amazing.
the bit. I disagree, but I did enjoy the bit where he was talking about just layers of companies being paid to do things for other companies. And it's just layers and layers of bureaucracy that only exists to make money for shareholders, really. It's not useful jobs that need to be doing. You could pay somebody to just move that chest of drawers over there, but instead I'm going to employ a company that employs people to employ people to employ people to move that over there, and somebody's going to do a feasibility study at some point. Oh dear.
I think you're talking about in Graeber's terminology, even though you didn't like the book, in Graeber's terminology, that they would be taskmasters. They would be people who create work for others to do, but if they did not exist, the work would still be done.
Yeah. I've upset people by saying, but I haven't totally finished bullshit jobs, but I did get bored of it.
Did you read it or did you listen?
Some of the things he said of bullshit jobs aren't that bullshit. I think some of them are, but some of them aren't.
Well, he defines what it is, though. He defines what a bullshit job is.
Yeah. There are no impact studies being done by the government on their policies, certainly not the universal credit cut. I talked to a gentleman in a pub at the weekend, and he worked full time. He worked full time, and he was on universal credit. And I just think that's absolutely mind blowing that that's possible in our country, that somebody hasn't looked at that and done a feasibility study and reckoned that we should be paying people enough to live if they are working all of the hours that, you know, is safe for somebody to work. But then Teresa Coffey says he should just work an extra 2 hours, which is funny because the last time I checked, they hadn't raised the minimum wage to £10 an hour. So an extra 2 hours wouldn't give them an extra £20 a week either. And and if you're going to redefine what full-time is, Teresa, well, you need to redefine that. But full-time is full-time. People shouldn't have to work more than full-time to be able to provide for their basic needs. Were you going to talk there, Neil?
Yeah, it's, you know, as I said earlier on, that if you're on universal credit, for every pound that you earn, they take 63 pence off you. So in order to earn back that £20 on a minimum wage job, being over 23, which is £8.91 an hour, you would actually have to work more like 6 hours to earn that back. And that also then takes into account, you know, income tax, national insurance contributions, things like that. So, you know, she's in cloud cuckoo land. She really is, you know, and the fact, you know, and as Peter Stavanovich said very well, that, you know, the Tories are doing what they do best is, you know, when they're up certain creeks, they just start lying the way out of it, in knowing that the majority of the mainstream media won't challenge them on it. I mean, how can you not know about? I mean, I can understand the majority of the mainstream media not knowing about the 63%. But they don't. Who fact checks? Who does it? Who does the research before they do these interviews? I mean, nobody. I mean, I watched it on BBC and I watched it on GMB, and nobody challenged her. Nobody challenged her on that fact. Nobody.
She's not exactly great though, is she, Teresa Coffey? Like, she's with her, like, going around puffing a cigar, voting for terrible things, having a go at Marcus Rashford, that kind of thing. She's not exactly a nice person, isn't she? Like, she voted against gay marriage, and she's like employed her sister on a casual basis on the parliamentary payroll, and, you know, she takes interns from the Roman Catholic Bishops' Conference, which pays for interns and provides them with accommodation. She's just everything people don't like about politicians, in my view, that's what she is. She doesn't care about anyone else, and she's on every single thing. Like, we're not saying she's breaking the rules, but she's doing everything that people would consider to be unethical, and, you know, and trying to take, like, she claimed so much last year in expenses, and yet she's saying, well, you can just work for 2 hours to get that money back. You're like, well, why don't you do some work? Why don't you, rather than claiming these vast expenses, you know, you should actually do some work rather than make other people's lives. Imagine, that's another aspect of bullshit jobs, actually, people who actually actively do damage. She is actively doing damage to people by voting the wrong way, and I would say that about all Tory MPs who voted for this. They are in a bullshit job because they think they're in a job, but they've actively damaged their communities by raising national insurance, economically and morally.
I'm just going to give a shout out to the shout out that is in the... it's gone. Where's my thing? I've got a thing. It says here, Restream. Go on. Shout out to... it's gone. Anyway, well, it was a shout out to Laura, Stewart and Penny, who Leo 2021 over on Discord says they hope that you're all having a rest. Yes, Stuart is actually fighting a monumental political battle, and that's why he couldn't be here, and we're very proud of him. And so hopefully he'll be able to sort of say something in the members chat later, remember you can join Socialist Think Tank as a member, and you get to hear all kinds of things about my chickens and Stuart's monumental political battles. And sometimes I might show you pictures of me doing aerial yoga, which is quite fun. Today I suspended myself upside down by my ankles. That was great. And yeah, speaking of like Tory MPs who aren't doing their job, have you seen the story about the new Hartlepool MP? The new Hartlepool MP, Jill Mortimer, still doesn't live in the constituency. She is again, this is a pattern as well, still serving on Hambleton District Council as a councillor and living in Hambleton, because if she moves out of Hambleton she can't serve on the council anymore, and she's apparently just like living the life of a local councillor, but drawn an MP salary as well. And she's not done any speaking in the House of Commons. She's not signed any early day motions. She's not done any like House of Commons type MP type work. So obviously she disagrees, because she thinks that she is doing work somehow just by being occasionally in the same room as Boris Johnson. She thinks that is how you fight for your constituents, to occasionally mention the word Hartlepool in front of Boris Johnson. They don't give a flying, do they? Like, they really don't.
I think that what annoys me, Sam, is that this is a pattern, that the people have rejected hardworking Labour MPs, people who did the job, for Tories. They voted for the politics and not for the local representatives. And so it's a very bitter pill to swallow, is that. And they will find out, but they don't seem to care. And the people who are voting are very often the people who aren't affected anyway, and it's a huge problem here.
Yeah.
There's also the problem of like Labour really needing to stand for something and really needing to connect with those communities like that. That did not go very well in Hartlepool when she was elected. I think the whole thing was a mess. Obviously, like Sedgefield's ALP even voted no confidence. Well, no, not no confidence. They asked Keir Starmer to resign following that. I'm happy enough to say that, because we haven't had a response in many months since we said that. But after that Hartlepool humiliation, and nothing, because it was so lackluster, just wandering around with a pint, going, oh, I've got a pint, vote for me. It's just it doesn't really work, does it? There's a deep distrust going on, and it needs to be rebuilt. And I think people are working relatively hard in Hartlepool to try and rebuild that trust. But there's all sorts of things went on with the council there as well. Remember, because a lot of the people who were causing the problems within the council, who were Labour, defected to go to, like, they went to other parties and formed coalitions with the Tories and caused untold damage. And it's never been, it never seems to be the people who the Labour Party seem to want rid of that have caused all this damage. But, that's up to Starmer, isn't it?
Indeed. Conference is going to be interesting. Maybe. Don't know.
Have they got enough members to hold a conference now?
That's a good question. Well, especially because it's all the way down there, isn't it? It's all the way down in Bristol, and like to the. I mean, I just couldn't. It's too far. I'd need my passport. It's
the Labour conference.
Yeah.
It is Brighton.
Brighton, see?
Yeah. We're down there for the World Transformed.
Too south for me to care.
Socialist Think Tank are there with the World Transformed. Yeah, on the Saturday night we're doing a live broadcast. So Socialist Night Live is coming from the World Transformed, and I'm running tech on like two other. Well, helping with technical aspects of the one before and the one after us, and ours is going to be a massive show, like with really good guests, and the one before us is a massive guest, and we're not allowed to tell you who it is. But it's so huge, and I'm kind of nervous to work on it. So like when I mess things up on this show, well, if I mess this up for this guy, it's gonna look pretty crap. But never mind.
wow.
And then there's another one
Thank you.
afterwards as well. So yeah, it's gonna be a big day on the Saturday from 3 till about 8. I think there's gonna be back-to-back shows, and
Nice.
ours is in the middle. So
Well, enjoy
yay.
yourself. I ran the numbers. It would have cost me about $3,000 to go. So no. But what was I going to say? It was something else. I'm sure you'll have a great time. No, it's gone. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if anything does happen. This whole thing about the general secretary is a bit of a non-story though, because they just won't allow a vote on it. I don't think.
I'll see what
They've
the
not
fallout is.
done a vote on it before, so that's what I hear. And I think
That was Akers who said that, though.
did he say that?
Yeah.
Oh well,
he's untrustworthy.
that is do not affiliate. Whatever he says, I want to say the opposite, please.
We've got a question.
I mean, the
from Chris
reason
Hood.
why MPs like Theresa Coffey can be as crap as they are is because they obviously feel very comfortable where they are, and they're comfortable that their constituents don't know about or care about people who are on universal credit. That's how come they keep getting elected, isn't it? And being so terrible at their job.
I think it's also the fact that nobody's holding them to account. I mean, to me, this government is acting like a petulant child that keeps pushing the boundaries, and there's no adult in the room to tell them, no, that's enough now. And that's why, look at some of the policies they're coming out with. It's because they know there's not going to be no one opposing them, because Keir Starmer's far too busy trying to kick people out of his party because they once spoke at a meeting of a group that was prescribed 4 years after they spoke at the meeting. You know what I mean? It's things like that, and so therefore that's why Theresa Coffey gets away with it, and Priti Patel. I mean, Priti Patel keeps breaching the ministerial code, and she's still in post, as many others have. But of course, Boris Johnson isn't keeping his own party in line, and which should mean it's very easy for Labour to jump on that and gain on it, but nowhere to be seen.
Paul says, not you, Paul, the Paul in the chat. Don't worry about Starmer's speech. You can probably find a Dyson Airblade in a hotel toilet somewhere. Much more exciting. I do really enjoy a Dyson Airblade, so I've got strong feelings about hand dryers.
I've got an idea based upon Dyson, and you know how he really dead keen on a free market. Well, if there was a really free market, then what you would do is get rid of all the patents, wouldn't you? Because that would be a free market. There'd be no such thing as a patent in a free market. So if he wants a free market, he should give all these patents away and lead the way. I think that's a good idea. We should suggest that to him.
Go
did
ahead,
you see Chris
Dyson,
Hood's
you first.
question, by the way?
What?
Did you see Chris Hood's question?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Do you want me to read it? I don't know if you can scroll
yeah.
back that far. It's been 131 days since the Durham County Council elections. What are the panel's thoughts on how things have gone so far? Sorry, Jane and Neil, because you aren't. He actually says that as well because he knows you're not from the local area.
Well, I think anybody who is counting their chickens at this point needs to hold the horses. Let's mix some more metaphors. Can we get any more animals in there? In the next month or so, the leadership of Durham County Council is going to have to announce what it wants to do with the new headquarters and announce what it's going to do with the DLI Museum. So those things might upset the coalition somewhat, because there are many and very different opinions on those topics. So I'll just watch this space. That's what I would say. John?
I don't have a clue. I've been out of it now for 131 days. I don't have a clue what's going on there. It's one thing that you have to face when you're in politics is that when you lose your place, my golly, the waters close over your head quickly, and sort of you disappear without trace. So I'm sorry, Chris. You tell us type of thing. We'll read it out because you'll know much better what's going on. Particularly, you'll know much better what's going on inside the coalition. And sort of we would be interested to know the reality of that. Right? I can't tell you anything at all.
There's been some comedy moments, haven't there, for me? Like, you know, I'm not seeing I think it's very early to see an impact. I think some of the funny things were like that Conservative, I think he's the vice, he's second in charge or something like that, the
Richard
deputy
Bell,
or whatever.
yeah.
Who said that the government have been underfunding this Durham County Council for years. Oh,
Yes.
This is terrible. This revelation, this has actually been going on for years. And you're like, yeah, we've been saying that for years, that your party have underfunded this area deliberately for years, and you've always said it's been Labour's fault. And they're like, what to do now? And they've realised the reality of the situation and now demanding more funds. So that was kind of like, I don't know, it was one of those awful kind of vindication moments where you just go, oh man, and how anyone has the absolute brass knackers to come out with that. Come on, man.
He's also, I mean, this is the guy who stood up a while ago and went mad at a Labour motion because there is no crisis in adult social care. There is no crisis in adult social care, he said. And now he's got his own government proving him a liar. And presumably, I noticed that the County Council Labour group webpage is, what's it called? County Durham Labour?
Yes.
Calling you out on that. Well done to them.
It's almost as if they just say things without any real thought going into it or any real knowledge going into it. Like, I wouldn't say that would be the case, but, it's almost as if you can imagine them just saying these random things and then, unless they just keep on tripping and falling into wrong facts.
Wrong facts. I love it. Right, does anybody else have anything burning that they have seen that they want to pick up on, that they want to say?
Catherine Gilsenan has been fantastic today in the comments. If you're still around, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciated reading what you said.
Fab. Jane?
Sorry, can I say something about the Panama Papers? Because I only found out recently that the journalist who broke the story was murdered afterwards, and I didn't know if others knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Daphne Caruana Galicia. Her son's fighting for justice, so they've charged the 3 hitmen basically, but they don't. One of them's talked, but they haven't talked about who hired them.
Right, so she was the Panamanian because it was a big coalition, wasn't it? Because it was the Ober. Well, I can't remember the names, but there were two. They were called brothers, but they weren't brothers, and because they had a similar sounding name, the German people who started the whole thing off. So is she the Panamanian link?
I think she must be, yeah. I just thought it would have been bigger news, but I literally found I was scrolling through Twitter and I thought, like, this can't be true. And I looked into it, and apparently so. So you'd think we'd know about something like that, especially when you think about the high-profile links within our own government. But perhaps it's too risky for us to be talking about this. Perhaps we're next.
Yeah, if we ever got popular enough, we probably would be. And why
it's
people not talking about Julian Assange?
To see if we're still alive.
Yeah.
Why aren't people talking about Julian Assange, who's been treated absolutely appallingly for being a whistleblower? And treated like and Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and all these people who blew the whistle on these terrible things that were going on, and if it was someone from another country who'd done this, who wasn't like a Western country, I think you'd be saying, what brave people. And if you saw that the Chinese government were treating Assange like he is being treated by us, the British, like in Britain at the moment, I think you'd be saying that is absolutely horrific, the treatment. It's torture. Oh God, I've remembered what my moment of the week was that I forgot.
Go for it.
It was at the bomb in Gaza again in retaliation for the prisoners who escaped from prison. So the prisoners who escaped from prison have described had been describing to their family what went on. They haven't been speaking to their family since then because no one knows where they are. Some of them have been captured and some of them haven't. But they've been describing how they were tortured. They had their legs broken. One of them had his leg broken and then was forced to continuously stand on his broken leg. And they're claiming that they were tortured by the Israeli government in prison, and now the bombing of Gaza, the Israeli government are saying it's incendiary balloons that they're worried about, and that's why they've increased their bombing. But the suspicion is that it's because of the embarrassment of these Palestinians who dug underneath a wall to escape from an Israeli prison.
Terrible stuff.
I'd like to raise a point that a comment made by Mia about the Islamophobia we discussed earlier on. I've only been seen on Facebook, so I've not seen any other comments, and there seems to be a delay coming on my feed. But anyway, Mia said, as a non-Muslim, I've experienced Islamophobia myself by people who have thought that I'm Muslim. A lot of people have made a lot of assumptions based on skin colour. I've been accused of being a terrorist just for questioning government policy on security, something I have every right to do in a democratic society. I internalised all these messages, which seriously affected my mental health. It was of great comfort to see Zarah speak out on this. It helped me feel as though I'm not alone. Although that was, it's important we do look at the impact of that this has on people, because it really does devastate people's lives, does racism.
And hate speech.
Yeah. I always had a lot of sympathy because when I was growing up, Dad being Irish, I used to get called a terrorist by people who knew that, but they could never tell by my skin colour. They could never tell by the way I looked that I was part Irish or that my dad was Irish or whatever. It was only people who ever knew me that used to call me a terrorist. That included teachers as well.
Oh, joy. They need some equality and diversity training.
He's dead now.
Oh, well, every cloud.
It's extreme, that fall.
Dig him up and teach him. Dig him up and teach him.
I don't think a public show is the time to tell anybody, either.
Oh dear. What was I going to say? That's one of the strong arguments, by the way, about why I think that trans women belong under the umbrella of feminism, because when somebody is because trans women are victims of misogyny. Right, nobody asks for your birth certificate before they start throwing misogynistic abuse towards you, and so it's a similar thing to what sort of Mia was saying about people assuming from her color of her skin that she's Muslim. Anyway, I'm having a tired day, so as you've noticed, my words aren't quite working as they're supposed to, but we'll get through it. I think it's probably time for us to wind up a little bit. So to remind everybody that you need to subscribe, whatever portal, whatever internet wondrousness that you are looking at this program through, you need to find a like button, find a subscribe button to make sure you are notified of future broadcasts. And another thing you can do is share it with your friends, share it with your political groups, share it with some people who you think might disagree with it. Let's really mix it up. And you can also join Socialist Think Tank as a member. It is free. It is free. What do you get in life for free nowadays? Well, you can become part of our community for free because we
our community. You've done it.
Oh no!
It is our community.
I did it again.
Yeah, no, you're inviting these people to join, and you're excluding them by your language.
Yeah, you could consider yourself to be ours in future, like part of us. What a terrible thing.
Yes. You can join the community for free, and it's nice, and you will get all the inside knowledge about Paul's interesting, exciting adventures of the world transformed with his people who we can't talk about at the moment, but close to the time he'll be able to talk about them, and in our little private groups he'll be able to talk about them. You'll get the real scoop then. So everybody do that, and we will see you next week at 9 o'clock on Tuesday for political.
Episode 60. I mean, what a milestone is that?
Wow.
60.
Yay. It's going to be
I need
good.
to get a job.
And
obviously the 3 jobs I've got aren't enough for me. I'm filling my life.
Origins is now moved to a Thursday as well. That's an important thing, and we have got an absolute belter on Thursday. We've got Joe Glenton, who some of you will know. He's absolutely brilliant. He was in the British Army. He went AWOL from Afghanistan. He's got this most magnificent story you can possibly imagine. He tells us about that. He tells us about his own politics. He tells us about the different, loads of different aspects, and why people who were on the parliamentary, is it the Defence Select Committee, or the Parliamentary Armed Forces Scheme, like Phil Wilson, and the people who dress up as army people, cosplay as army people, get called Waltz or Walter Mitties by people in the army, and are not very well thought of by people in the army. That's a revelation. So I'm sure Mr. Wilson would like to watch that to find out what people in the army actually thought of him when he turned up at a BAE Systems event. And
you've got a lot of spare time now, Mr. Wilson. He can watch that.
Yeah, bless him.
All right, then I'm going to say bye-bye. Everybody say bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. I'm there.
Keep the red flag flying here.